What's up everybody? Welcome back to the Speedy's Garage YouTube channel. Today we're going to try to do a little refurbishing on these 20-year-old fog lamps. So wish us luck. If you guys remember, we did some LED tail lamps to update Project Sport Runner a little bit, and then decided to go on through the entire vehicle and replace all of the external lamps with LED versions. And we had a lot of success with that. Even though it's about 20 years old, we didn't have any problems until we got to these fog lights. They weren't on the 4Runner when I bought it, but they were an option. And right after I picked it up, I decided I wanted them. And surprisingly, the 4Runner was actually wired for these from the factory. They just didn't put the bulbs in. So all I had to do was get the fog lights, and there was literally a plug underneath the bumper that plugged in. And then I bought the factory turn signal stalk, and I'll show you that there. It has a little switch on it for the fog lights to make it all work like factory. Anytime I start modifying a car, I try to do it as close to or as much like the factory might have done it. So I bought these and put them in. I haven't had any trouble with them, and I've replaced the bulbs in them a couple of times. And I put some really good H3. I wanted the amber colored ones for, you know, seeing in fog or mist or whatever, and I haven't had to replace these in a long time. These are really good ones. I think these were actually Hella brand, which is the same brand as the fog lamp. So they've been in there a few years, and when I pulled the little rubber caps off the back to put the LED bulbs in that I had picked up, well, popped the rubber caps off the back, and I found a ton of corrosion. And I'll show you some clips of that from back when I actually tried to clean them up. So there, you can see we actually soaked them in some lime calcium rust remover product, and it cleaned them up pretty good. These things were covered. These little aluminum back housing clips were covered. It looked like they had white powder, you know, just caked all over them. And so it cleaned them up really good. I think the problem is these lights are steel. And like I was saying, with the brackets bolting to the frame, that's how they ground. So the way it works is this piece sets in here, and it has a specific direction that it goes. I'll try to show you this. So like I was saying, this piece sets in here like so, and you'll see it has a specific direction, and then the bulb sits underneath this clip and it holds it in place, and the power line from your bulb connects, and then the ground connects actually to this aluminum backing plate. And there's 3 little screws that go in here and hold this backing plate in place. Well, this little switch right here, or catch, it's what holds the bulb in. Take this back out. You can see this one still has it attached, but just barely. I mean, all this is a little thin piece of aluminum they had chrome plated, and that is really weak and brittle after 20 years. This one, it actually dissolved and kind of broke off. I've still got this little piece, but some of it's missing. So I've got to figure out a way to try to refurbish these. You can still get the lamp itself. So I am going to get a set of those on order, and they're on their way now, just so I have a spare set just in case. I'm also going to call Hella and see if, and I'll update you guys, if I can get these by themselves, because that will also solve the problem. But I'm going to try to repair this, and I don't know if I can solder the little arm back on. All it is a little clip that holds it. I don't know, other than just holding the bulb in place, how big of a deal it is. But I'm going to try to refurbish these just to try to save them, really, and have some spares. So we're going to see how we do with that. And I think what happens is, because this is aluminum and this is steel, and you have electricity basically running through this aluminum into the steel, because that's how the bulb grounds, you end up, and water can get in there. So we're going to probably do 2 or 3 things. We're going to try to find a way to maybe separate the backing plate a little bit from the housing, maybe a rubber washer, maybe some JB Weld or something on the back as a coating, or maybe some paint, I'm not sure. The screws going through will still connect it to the steel and allow it to ground, so we still be okay there. But I think what happens is, when this is in there, you got aluminum, you got steel, get a little bit of water in there, now you get electricity flowing through it, you get what's called galvanic corrosion. And it's when you have 2 dissimilar metals, and it actually turns into like a chemical reaction, for lack of a better term, and the metal basically starts to eat each other. And one will suffer more than the other. And in this case, I thought the aluminum had suffered more, but after cleaning them up, the aluminum actually isn't quite as bad. The steel is actually what's gotten pitted. So it looks like the steel starts to break down. So we're probably gonna put a little coating, or I don't know what we could do, maybe silicone, maybe some dielectric grease, I'm gonna do a couple of things just to try to work it out as I refurbish these. If you've got ideas, even after I get done with this video, leave me comments below and let me know if you've experienced something like that, if you know of a way to prevent it. We're also gonna try to seal these up a little bit better so they don't get water in them to begin with, because without water, you won't have galvanic corrosion. And if we can avoid that, that'll solve the problem. Let's get to cleaning these up and see what we can do with them. And since I have found the lights themselves, and I've got those on order, I'm gonna start by focusing on the brackets. Luckily, these are still in excellent shape, but while I got them off the truck, I might as well try to disassemble them, clean them up, and maybe hit them with just a couple of coats of Rust-Oleum paint, just to, maybe they'll last another 20 years before they have any more issues. So we're gonna start by disassembling them, and what makes them unique is this bracket that mounts to the 4Runner, and it has this adjuster on the side, so you can actually aim the fog lights. So that's what makes them unique. You can probably fabricate up something like this, the bracket itself, but this piece right here might get a little bit tricky. You could probably use a bolt and a nut and a couple of lock screws or something, but it's pretty nice the way it's set up. It looks like you can turn this and this will unlock, and then the two nuts will come out of the light housing, and then you can take the whole light housing out of the bracket. But this is 20-year-old plastic, so we're going to have to be really, really careful. All right, I put a little WD-40 on all the bolts just to help them along, especially this one. This one's plastic. It's got a little locking tab right here. I looked at it, maybe trying to pry that a little bit, but that plastic feels pretty brittle, so I'm going to hope the WD-40 helps us out. And I've got some needle nose, and I'm just going to try to turn this so that it unlocks. I think we got it. Success. That was the part I was worried about, to be honest. I think you need to do that to get this off of here. Like I said, these aren't in bad shape, just a little bit of rust in a couple of spots. And now for some live action, we're going to get after these 8mm side bolts. Oh, that wasn't too bad. All right, good. Well, I'm just going to try gently pushing from the back on the light. Oh, there we go. Okay. So I guess it pops out like that. I expected this bracket to actually pop off of this plastic bracket to pop off of the metal housing, but it is still on there. It feels like, oh, I see. It's got a little collar that goes into this bracket, so that's how you're gonna have to get it out. You're gonna pop the light out first, just like I did, and then this will probably, again, it's old, so I'm being a little bit tentative with it so I don't break it, but we're gonna have to squeeze this together a little bit or bend these out a little bit, and then this plastic will come off, and then we can go after the metal. So that's exactly what I did. I pushed down on one side, and there's our little adjustment ring completely out of the way now. Now we've just got metal bracket. I'll clean this up with a little bit of sandpaper, maybe wire wheel it. It was starting to rust back here. That's bad, no bueno. And then we'll put a couple of coats of Rust-Oleum rust preventive paint on it. Save that guy. Here's all the parts all cleaned up. All I did was give them a bath. Here's the light housings. You can see, I think it's the top side that still looks pretty good. The bottom side, it's a little dull. I could probably polish these if I wanted to, but honestly, that's pretty good for the age that these things are. Cleaned up the brackets. They're all in good shape, no cracks or anything. I even cleaned up the wire harnesses. Cleaned them up, scrubbed these with a toothbrush, cleaned them with some electrical contact cleaner, so they're all like new. So everything is good to go, except for these brackets need a little bit more work. I'm gonna take care of this rust. I'm gonna get after them with this wire wheel, and I'm definitely gonna be wearing some safety glasses. You do not want one of these little wire pieces to fly out and hit you in the eye. This thing's gonna be spinning pretty fast. We're gonna take this and clean up these brackets. If you don't have a pneumatic angle grinder, then you can use one of these on a drill. But I've got air tools and an angle grinder, so I'm gonna go at it with this. So after the wire wheel, that's where we ended up. Purpose of that is to get any loose flakes of paint removed. And you can see it was starting to pit one of these brackets. The other one, not too bad. For some reason it was attacking this other one. I don't know if, I believe these are powder coated originally, and maybe it just wasn't as good or water got underneath that paint. So now I'm gonna go after it a little bit with one of these Scotch-Brite sanding pads just to give it some tooth and to get any other little loose pieces of paint off. Then we'll start hitting them with some primer and paint. That should be good as new. There they are sanded up, and you may ask, well, can I use sandpaper instead of one of these Scotch-Brite pads? And the answer is yes. It's just the Scotch-Brite pad, because it's a pad, has a little bit easier flexibility to get into all the nooks and crannies, but sandpaper will get it done too. We're just about ready to paint, and I'm not painting a car here. We're painting some fog light brackets, but I still want to do it right. So I always use this wax and grease remover. Pour a little bit on a rag, and you don't want to touch the rag to the can. I see a lot of people do that. It'll actually pick up debris and leave it in your can. So I'm going to wipe it down with some of this. I've already washed them, and I'm trying not to touch it as much as possible. I've already washed them with some detergent, and this is just the final step of cleaning them up before we put some paint on. It's about 30 degrees outside today. It's wintertime and it's cold and you can't paint in those conditions. It's also a little bit windy. So I'm gonna have to paint these in the shop. So I built myself this little small paint booth, for lack of a better term, out of a box. I've covered the car up. I'm gonna stay kind of back over here and just hit little bursts and let it settle. What you don't wanna do is just go crazy, start spraying all over the place inside like this. And then I'll just let them dry, and I've turned on the heat. So I've got about 70 degrees in here, and that's about optimal to let the paint do the best it can do. It'll flow out nice and smooth, and it will dry appropriately. I'm going to use Rust-Oleum primer, and it takes like a half hour to dry, which is nice in these conditions, this temperature and humidity, as well as their satin black spray paint. So hopefully this will help me prevent rust for another 15 years on those brackets. Got it on a hanger so I can maneuver it and not touch it. Tends to work out pretty good. Plus, I can hang it up when I'm done for it to dry. I'm gonna do light coats. That's about 1 coat of primer. We'll let that dry about a half hour, then we'll hit it with a coat of paint. While I'm letting those brackets dry, I'm gonna start working on these little aluminum retaining plates, I guess is what I'm gonna call them. I'm gonna start with the one that still has the little clip mostly attached, and see if I can solder it and almost like weld the aluminum back. I don't know how this is gonna work. It may not work at all, but it's about the only thing I can do. If this doesn't work, we still got options. I can come up with a way to use one of the screws that holds this to the fog light housing and have a piece come across and hold on to the fog light. It just means when you change bulbs, it's gonna be a little bit more work. I'll have to remember to take that screw out. We're gonna see what we can do with this soldering iron. This is my propane powered soldering iron. Makes it nice. There's no cables or lines or wires or anything. We'll let that heat up, see if we can get this done. All right, I'm gonna just act like I'm soldering wire together. I've got my larger tip on the soldering iron so that it'll generate more heat or more heat transfer. And I'm just gonna touch it to the plate, and it's aluminum, so it should heat up rather quickly. And then I'm gonna touch the solder to the plate and see if it'll stick. If it just runs off, we know it's not gonna work. All right, so soldering didn't work. I tried a couple of different ways. I even tried pre-tinning the aluminum. No bueno. So we're gonna have to punt. I'm gonna try to use some JB Weld, or specifically JB Quick. It's kind of a last ditch effort to save this little tab. And if that doesn't work, I'm gonna have to look at other solutions like a little ring terminal with a little leg on it or something like that that will reach across and lock this into place. But we're gonna see how the JB Weld or JB Quick does. We're gonna start with the one that still has some attached so that it's easy to work on. I'm not gonna worry about being too careful with this because it's just, like I said, it's just where it closes. There's what that one looks like. This was the one that had still some attachment left. I've coated it up in JB Weld. We're gonna see if it makes it strong enough. I've had pretty good luck with JB Weld in the past, but this is asking quite a bit, I would say. The other one, that one's gonna be a little bit more tricky because it wasn't still attached, so I'm gonna have to probably glue it once with JB Weld and then go around it again to give it some support. We'll see how we do. Well, if I didn't say I was surprised, I wouldn't be surprised. That is at least as strong as a brand new clip would have been, if not stronger. And that's the one that still had some attached. You know, JB Weld to the rescue. I just can't believe it. All it's got to do is connect and hook onto this latch. I mean, it's not like it gets beat on or anything. As long as I'm not crazy ham-fisted when I'm changing light bulbs out. Now that we're going to LED, we shouldn't be doing that often anyway. These should last a long time. Here's the one that wasn't connected at all. It had completely broken off. Even it, I mean, that's probably stronger than it was when it was just a piece of aluminum. So pretty happy with that. JB Weld may have just saved these fog lamps. It's been a couple of days. The brackets have just been hanging out over here drying. They have been primed and painted. And I finished cleaning up the original fog light housings, and I went ahead and sprayed a little bit of that Rust-Oleum paint in here just for good measure. I did put the screws in so that the threads didn't get any paint in them, but those are cleaned up about as good as I can get them. Again, they're pretty old, but I got some good news. Our new ones are here, so we're going to take a look and see how the new ones compare. So these got here pretty quick. Let's take a look and see. So these are Hella fog lights. They should match up to exactly what we already have. Wow, comes with quite a bit of stuff in the box actually. Bolt washer and a drain tube. It even comes with a bulb. This one will probably be white, which I'm going to do yellow. I like the yellow bulbs better. Comes with a bracket, which we will not be able to use on the 4Runner. And some more hardware to attach the fog light to the bracket. So pretty complete. And here is the actual fog light. Curious if anything's changed over time. Wow. They're exactly the same, like zero difference. So here's one of the old ones versus one of the new ones. And there's what gave us trouble in the original. So those are obviously brand new. You can see it started to corrode in here a little bit. So the steel started to rot away. I've fixed it all now. So now I really got to decide what I really want to do. Do I want to just run the new ones? Do I want to run the old ones? Leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think. Should I send these back? Should I keep them as spares? Should I continue to run the old ones? Keep the old ones as spares? I don't know. I've done a little bit of research on these while I was waiting on the new ones to show up. And it seems like on the SR5 model, and that's the model I have, when you got the fog lights, you got these Hella ones, and they came with a little bit different bracket than the factory. If you got factory installed fog lights from Toyota, like say on a limited 4Runner as an example, they came with like this crazy bracket that came down, a piece went forward and a piece up here, and they don't make those anymore. The aftermarket makes them, but I have read that they leak. So you can still get a fog light to replace broken or busted or rusted out fog lights, but it doesn't sound like the quality. And I've got depot headlights on the 4Runner that they've done really well with the HID conversion. You guys saw a couple weeks ago we did the LED tail light conversion on the 4Runner. They were also, I'm pronouncing it Depot, D-E-P-O, I think that's how you say it. The aftermarket version of these is also a Depot brand, so they may be good, they may not be, but I know these are because these have been on the truck like 16 or 17 years. And I've got two new ones. The housings and everything, can't get these I don't think anymore. And you can't get the brackets. That's how we refurbished all of that. But let me know what you think we should do. I'm kind of perplexed at this point. I'm probably overthinking it, to be honest, but it is what it is. It's how I do things. And I forgot to take a look in the last bag, but it actually comes with a wiring harness as well with really nice heavy gauge wire and a nice rubber boot. Now the only problem is that plug it's not compatible with what's on the 4Runner, the factory wiring harness. So in a pinch, if your wiring harness was just completely destroyed, you could take the connector off the original and put it on here. Wouldn't be too much work, get the right pins and stuff, and maybe some new seals, but I'm just gonna go back with the original. I did notice one more thing on the new fog lights. The little bracket screw holes are not threaded. So keep that in mind if you go and get a replacement set of these. However, the hardware is self-tapping, self-cutting. So you'll just need to be careful when you put the screws in that you do it nice and slow so that it can cut its threads in the housing. But go ahead and reassemble the old lights. I did put some dielectric grease all on the inside, just a light coat on the inside of the housing as well as where the bulb goes through, and I put a light coat on the little backing plate. I don't know if it'll help, but it certainly can't hurt. It does say right here on it, prevents corrosion. So maybe it'll help us. And I also put some anti-seize on the little Torx bolts before I'm gonna put them back in as well. We're just gonna reassemble it. And I did go ahead and connect up my power probe and make sure that me painting the housing and putting some dielectric grease on the parts in here didn't affect the functioning of the light. I want to make sure it would still ground and all that. So I did double check that, so we're good to go there. It's a couple of days later. Mrs. Speedy came out the other night when I was finishing up painting the brackets, and she said it was time for me to take her to dinner. That's exactly what I did. Happy wife, happy life. But now we're back to finishing up the project. In the meantime, I started taking a look at the bulb, and this was the LED H3 bulb that I ordered, and you can kind of see there, it's got a different back end on it, and I didn't notice that when I ordered the bulbs. The picture, it was hard to tell. That's the kind of back that I need, and that's the one that it has. You can see there's quite a bit of difference there, and what that means is it will not fit under the little clip that holds the bulb in place. So I had to order some different LED bulbs. So we're going to see how those look. Hopefully they'll be better and will do the job. So let's get those out, take a look. So that's what these look like. They even have a little lens on them that should spread the light out a little bit. The backing plate looks about the same. And in the end, I did decide to go ahead and use the new fog lights and keep the old ones as spares. So I kind of talked to Miss Speedy about it at dinner. I was kind of mumbling about it, and she said, you worry about the silliest things. Just use the new ones and keep the old ones as spares. So that's what I did. I did disassemble them and put anti-seize on the little screws and dielectric grease all over the backing plate and the inside of the housing. We're also going to really try to waterproof this thing to prevent any type of corrosion, but now let's test fit one of these bulbs. Bingo. That is what we needed. You curious how it looks? Well, I am too. So we're going to get out our power probe and do a little test. We're going to start with one of the new fog lights with one of the original, and these are yellow Hella H3 halogen bulbs. See how that looks. I've kind of turned off the lights in the back of the shop, so hopefully you see a good representation. All right, I'm going to switch over to one of the new LED bulbs. A little bit more yellow, maybe not quite as bright, but still pretty good. I see a lot of comments about people complaining about these lights not being bright, the bulbs not being bright. These aren't really designed to illuminate the road in the fog. These are designed so that other people can see you in the fog. That's really what they're made to do, and I think those are going to work out just fine. I thought somebody might be super curious, so I turned all the lights off in the shop, and we'll do that same test. So here is the original H3 halogen bulb. There's kind of what it's going to look like. Here is the new LED. I would say it's about 80% as bright as the halogen, but it's drawing a whole lot less power. It's a nicer yellow color. These are 3000 Kelvin in color. So if you're wanting yellow lights, these are the ones to get, 3000 Kelvin. And again, it's just so people can see me. It's not necessarily to light up the road. I think this will work great. Now we're just going to reassemble the brackets, put the little adjustments through, try to line up the notches to the metal bracket. There's that. Put the plastic through, and remember, don't forget to turn the little tab that locks it. Use needle nose for that. There we go. Put the lock into place. That is ready to go. We're going to do the same thing with the other one. Now we're just going to insert the fog light into the bracket. Pay attention because it's labeled. It has the word Hella written on the lens. At least these do. And there's a diffuser or a block plate in here, and so I assume that means they want this facing up, so we're going to install it that way. Just slides back into the housing and snaps into place pretty easy peasy. There we go. I did go ahead and take the screws and start them to get the threads started on the self-cutting or self-tapping, what are you going to call it, bolts that hold it in place, just to make it easier to reassemble. We'll run those down snug. They've already got some blue Loctite on them. I'm not going to put any more. Feels pretty good. Torque wrench in the elbow. Same thing with this one. Next, we're going to try to waterproof this thing. That's really what caused our problem from the get-go. Water got in here, you got electricity flowing through this thing. I'm hoping with the LED being in there and not requiring as much power, that will also help. But I am going to do some waterproofing just to try to extend the life of these fog lights. I've got some black RTV. I'm going to put a dab down in here where the wires come through, because I can move the wires in and out, so I know that that's a spot water could get in. I'm not so much worried about the vent, because water would have to travel up the vent tube and then come out and into the boot. But water could probably splash up through where these wires are much more easily. So I'll put a little bit of black RTV in there just to seal those up. And I recommend you test fit your connections to make sure that the pins and the connector are the right spacing, I guess is what you would call it, so that they're not too tight and not too loose. I had to adjust mine slightly with a small screwdriver and some small needle nose, but I've got them where they fit nice and snug, where I know there's a good connection, but not so tight that I have to feel like I have to tear them apart to remove them. Remember, you might have to change a bulb or something one day, so you want to have them snug but not super tight. I've got that all set. Now we're going to put some dielectric grease in this pocket just for a little protection, and I'm going to put some on the ground strap too for extra good measure. So we're good to go there. Smear that around a little bit. And now we're just going to hook it up. So I'm going to start with our 12-volt wire. And if yours doesn't have a little boot or something over it, make sure this isn't exposed. You don't want the ground and the 12-volt to ever touch. Mine's got this little connector in here. Now I got to find it. There we go. That's now plugged up. We're going to do the same thing with the ground. And now I'm just going to kind of route the wires around where I feel like they're tucked away and put the boot on. Make sure that the vent tube is aimed right towards straight down to the ground. I think this is sealed up pretty good. You can actually put some air into the little vent tube, and if it makes pressure, you've probably got it sealed up. But just for extra security, because I've had a problem, I'm gonna put a zip tie, and there's like a perfect little slot right here for this size zip tie. I'm gonna put that around this boot, and I'm not gonna go crazy super tight. I'm just gonna snug it up as just a small extra measure to hopefully prevent, I'm gonna flip this around the other way, to hopefully prevent any future water issues. Once I have the zip tie in place, I'm just gonna make sure I can't turn the boot. If it doesn't move, yeah, and this zip tie doesn't move, yeah, that's on there tight, as tight as it needs to be. And that's pretty much a rebuilt set of fog lights. Now we're gonna put them on the truck, get them aimed, job done. Reinstalling the light with this setup is super easy. It is literally one bolt on that bracket. I did go ahead and hit this bracket with some quick and dirty Rust-Oleum black paint just for a little bit of extra protection. And now we're just gonna tighten things up. And what you want to do is make sure you take a look at the light from the front, make sure that it is centered in the opening, and you're good to go. Just tighten it down. And finally, I cleaned up the other end of the connector with a toothbrush, got as clean as I could. I am going to fill this end with some dielectric grease just for a little bit of added insurance on having any corrosion on the connector. And now we just connect it up. And you can plug this little connector into the other side of the bracket, and it will actually hold the wiring up out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and do that too. Finally, we just aimed the lights, and it's pretty straightforward with this setup. The instructions said to set the truck 25 feet from a wall, turn the lights on, measure straight out 25 feet, and then you want the center line of the light to be 4 inches, or the top part of the light pattern to be 4 inches below the center line of the light. That's how we've got it set up. I'll show it to you. Don't know if it'll show up on camera, but that's what it looks like. And these are the LEDs, plenty bright, just as I suspected. So we started off just wanting to upgrade some exterior lights to LED. That ended up turning into a project of rebuilding and restoring some fog lights and then replacing them with brand new ones. But in the end, everything turned out great. All the exterior bulbs on the 4Runner are now LED, except for the headlights, which I left HID. I've been super happy with those. I'm not disappointed, honestly. I was looking for projects to do this winter. That was another one that was kind of fun to do. I've now got a spare set of restored fog lights in the toolbox in case I ever need them. I've got some other projects planned for Project Sport Runner. I'm gonna try to do something cool with these Bolt LEDs, and that's gonna involve these wiring diagrams. So stay tuned. That's the next project on the list. We're gonna start doing something on the interior. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Check us out on Instagram. It's @Speedys_garage, as well as our website, www.speedysgarage.net. And hopefully I will see you out there.